What's good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and I'm riding solo dolo tonight like Dan Marino before he got his first 1,000-yard rusher and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, if y'all even remember him, taking y'all back. Because EM is not around tonight. EM is out and about doing his thing on his grind, on his hustle. So it'll just be me tonight. But I got a very special guest, guys, and the reason why we're actually a few minutes late is because we were just chopping it up, talking some pigskin, and it was pretty good conversation. And at this point, I wish we recorded it, but it's all good. We can go right back through it again. Guys, he's honestly one of my favorite follows on Twitter. Like I was telling him before we went live, when I really started getting into this whole Dolphins social media thing in terms of when we started our channel and I really turned my Twitter account into a Dolphin-centric account, when I found PFN, Neal Driscoll was one of the first guys, especially around draft season. It was basically him, Benjamin Albright, and Tony Pauline, who I was following the most, and then Matty Infante and Kanata right behind them because they're all fantastic at what they do. But you need to follow him on Twitter if you aren't already at Neal Driscoll. I got his Twitter link below in the description, so you can go give him a follow if you haven't already. But guys, without further ado, man, he's fantastic at what he does. He's going to give you some insight. He's going to prove to you why he is tonight. So, guys, we got Neal Driscoll from Pro Football Network. How's it going, Neal?
Good, man. Thanks for having me tonight, Reason.
I appreciate you taking the time out on your Wednesday night to come on, brother.
Absolutely. It never will turn down an opportunity to talk football, draft, Miami Dolphins. Always, I'm thinking it when I'm sitting on my couch, so I might as well get up and talk about it, right?
I love it, bro. So let's get right into it because we were talking before we went live. Let's talk about the whole OBJ thing and take it.
Sure.
That I found in Benjamin Albright. So just give everyone a whole update on the OBJ and Dolphins if there's anything even there.
Yeah, Ben Albright at Pro Football Network is putting out there that the Browns are not actively shopping Odell Beckham Jr. Now, I think it was Dan Sileo came out and said, the Miami Dolphins reached out to Cleveland and, put some feelers out and are potentially interested in trading for him. On the field, OBJ is everything the Dolphins need in a receiver. But, I think what prevents that from happening is that, first of all, he's expensive. You got to give up draft capital and a lot of cap space to get him. And when, the whole future of this football team is on Tua, right, on Tua's shoulders. And if you watch the Browns-Ravens this weekend and you watch that game, which was just a bloodbath, Baltimore just beat them up. But Odell Beckham was checked out. I think it was one of the first plays of the game. Marlon Humphrey got a pick. At this point, you don't need that type of player in your locker room. Brian Flores has done a lot of work to create the culture that, we have, and it's heading in the right direction. He's a good player. At times, he's a great player. But, I don't think he's the right player for what we're looking to do when you factor in the draft compensation, the cap space, and, what troubles he might bring to the locker room. Because, face it, it didn't work in New York for him, and it's not working in Cleveland for him. So why would it work in Miami?
So let me ask you this. In terms of draft compensation, what do you think realistically it's going to cost?
I think it would probably cost a high second-round pick. I think that first-round pick has sailed because we saw Cleveland give up a pair of first-round picks for him, and, he's just been pedestrian. I on my fantasy football teams, I was scooping him up this year because I was expecting – a big year from him. And hey, it's only been 1 week. And when that guy gets motivated, he can be one of the top receivers in football. But with that said, I think he's been a big headache there. And there's obviously something wrong with the chemistry with him and Baker Mayfield, for whatever reason. They're going to have to make a pick of, is it Baker, our quarterback, and we are going to trade Odell? Or is Odell a guy who's going to be a franchise player and we're on the quarterback market next year? But, it's a mess in Cleveland. And I know, you can change the stripes there, but, you're getting the same results. And it really doesn't matter. Something has been off there for a long time. I was sky high on Baker Mayfield coming in after his rookie season. I didn't slow down on that at all. He was remarkable, and for whatever reason, that next step hasn't happened. They have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, which is probably the best 1-2 punch in the NFL. They go out and spend a top 10 pick on Jedrick Wills, give Jack Conklin all the money in the world to play right tackle, and it's still off. You still get 6 points. And Baltimore's
and Austin
good.
Hooper, right? And they brought in Austin Hooper.
Austin Hooper. But, Baltimore's got a great defense. They're a great team. Playing in Baltimore's tough, even without fans. They're very prepared. John Harbaugh always has them prepared. So let's see tomorrow night when they play the Bengals, what's a better representation of that team. Okay. But I can tell you this: if they don't go to Odell early and get him involved, by halftime you're going to see him pouting, running around, arguing with coaches on the sidelines. And the one thing I know about football is that no player is bigger than the team. No player is bigger than the locker room. We just saw that in Baltimore with Earl Thomas, a Hall of Fame safety, getting kicked out the door practically, and now not even getting a sniff on another team. You have to be a good teammate. It matters in today's world. And, we'll see. Talent doesn't always equate to production. But, I don't think it's going to happen in Miami. I know there's a lot of people that are excited about it. Look, if they traded for him, I'd be pretty excited about having him on the team too, until Tua didn't give him 12 targets a game and he's arguing with Tua on the sidelines, give me more targets. It's not about the team. It's about Odell.
Mm-hmm. Like I said last year with Baker, there were two things that were different the year that he tied the touchdown record. There was no Freddie Kitchens, and the offense ran organically in terms of passing through a possession receiver in the slot in terms of Landry, and then the ball was spread throughout everyone else. And this is what we were talking about earlier before we went live. This would be my issue with bringing in a guy like OBJ is, Tua Tagovailoa, in terms, we talk about getting acclimated to the speed, you know what I'm saying, understanding the terminologies, pre-snap, post-snap reads, all that jazz. But on top of that, you want him, especially at that game speed, to be able to get into a rhythm of going through his progressions, making his proper reads, et cetera, moving from the right read to the next right read instead of being erratic with his head twitchiness, right? And I feel like having in the back of his mind a guy like OBJ saying, I want the ball targeted my way 10 or 12 times, when Tua, as a rookie, is only going to be throwing, 20, 25 times, maybe max? Because if he's throwing 30, it's not a good situation, right? So, isn't that something? Because like we talked about Allen Robinson now, we can probably both agree that deal will get done. But if an Allen Robinson is on the market, a guy who just wants to be paid for a service, as opposed to a guy who's already been paid for a service and doesn't care if you win as long as he gets his 15 minutes in the spotlight, I mean, who are you going with, Neal?
In that scenario, I would take Allen Robinson, even though, I think we all saw the Pro Football Focus stats that the Dolphins receivers were horrific at creating separation this week. And, he does a lot of similar things to a Preston Williams. But let's be honest, as much as we're Dolphins fans, he's way more advanced. Allen Robinson thrives at the contested catch. He is a jump ball receiver who can win. He can get open. He runs great routes. He has been one of the most productive players in the NFL at his position, despite having Blake Bortles and Mitch Trubisky, who are the jokes, the quarterback position that we all make when we talk about bust. And, he's also a high character guy. But overall, and another guy that we could always throw in the ring is Juju Smith-Schuster, knowing that he has a great relationship with Tua. He's in a contract year. We just saw him on Monday night catch 2 touchdowns from Ben. But the reality is that, this draft is so loaded at the wide receiver position. We just came off a historic 2020 draft class. And for my money, I'll take this draft class over that one. You have Jamar Chase out of LSU. You have the Alabama twosome of Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle. We were just talking about Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota, Rondell Moore out of Purdue, and et cetera, et cetera. So, the Dolphins are one of those teams that, it wouldn't surprise me if they sniffed around the free agent market after this season to see what was out there. But I just think that Christopher Greer really values that draft capital. And he, the jury is out. Obviously, you can't judge a draft class after 1 week. But, man, he knocked my socks off with what he did this year. And we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, going forward here. But, I just – when it comes to the round 1 and 2 picks, I love to have those. And I better be getting an elite player that I can control for a long time. And look, Allen Robinson's only 27 years old. He's far from old, but it might cost more than a second to acquire someone like that. And it does seem like the divorce that we all thought might happen isn't going to happen. And it seems like he's going to get a deal done there in Chicago.
Yeah, I agree with you there too. Let's talk about this for a second before we get into the draft class, because that's a name that has been quietly, everyone hears a name hit the market and everyone's like, oh, the Dolphins need to get him. But the one that's been consistently floating is Juju Smith-Schuster.
Sure.
Is there, from what you understand, is there any legitimacy to that at all? Is he even going to hit the open market?
Yeah, let's look at the pieces of the puzzle, right? The Dolphins were rumored to be heavily interested in Mike Wallace before free agency and locked him down. Same with Brandon Albert, right? When they want a player, somehow it gets out, and maybe things are different under the Brian Flores regime. But they've gotten the guys they've wanted. Where there's smoke, there's fire, and I actually believe that Juju Smith will hit the market because the Steelers historically have been kind of stingy at paying their wide receivers. We saw them get rid of Mike Wallace to keep Antonio Brown. They jettisoned Emmanuel Sanders. And now they have Chase Claypool and they have Deontay Johnson. I think they'd be comfortable going with those guys. Plus, the Steelers aren't going to have a lot of cap room, right? They're going to be right up against it. Bud Dupree, who is probably the best player on their defense on Monday night, at least, he's going to cost you $20 million a year. I don't know. And they got to fix that offensive line that's getting a little older. And their left tackle, Villanueva, is a free agent, I believe, as well. So there's a lot that they have to do. They're, right around the corner, they're going to be paying Minka. They have to, they will. I guess Ben's probably got another year or two under the belt. But I just see I envision it being really hard for them to keep Juju Smith-Schuster because I think they're going to build this team around that defense. With that defense, they're in any football game. When they play the Ravens this season twice, they're the only defense that I confidently think can give Lamar a good run for his money. They did it last year. I think that they're going to make that the strength of their team. And then when Ben Roethlisberger does say, it's over, they'll probably get a young quarterback, but keep that young defense intact and really build around that. But, I'd open Juju with open arms. I think you get a guy like that in because he can create separation. You get him, Preston Williams, and Devontae Parker, and then I still think you go and get a speedy guy in round 2. Maybe somehow Rondale Moore falls because of an injury and opting out of the season. There's not going to be a lot of recent tape on him, and because I think it's really important to put Tua in the best position to have weapons and an arsenal at his disposal. Because we saw that at Alabama, and people wanted to give him a red flag because of that. Like Joe Burrow didn't have Jamar Chase,
and Justin Jefferson
and Terrence Marshall
and Joe Brady, whose whole offense is based on manufacturing space for wide receivers. I
think they went very meat and potatoes this year, building the offensive line, getting Raquan Davis in the trenches, signing Shaq Lawson and Emmanuel Agba. Jason Strowbridge, they spent a lot of resources on the lines. I think they're going to go after the playmakers next year. I think you're going to see wide receivers, maybe a ball hawking safety like Andre Cisco from Syracuse immediately comes to mind. And then we just talked about that before we came on. Obviously one of their biggest needs is going to be finding a linebacker that, doesn't get washed out on every run play like we saw with Landon Roberts this week.
So let's talk about this for a sec. So let's keep on the Juju. If you are in the position where, okay, we'll talk about the top 5 pick in a second.
Sure.
But if you got let's say you're in the 10 to 20 range, okay, with your second pick.
Sure.
Right? Because we both know that there are Deshaun Watson and a Laramie Tunsil injury away from us getting a top 5 pick, right? So,
sure. Absolutely.
And we all know the receiver core is probably going to go down sooner rather than later, right? In terms of the durability issues they've had. So, we'll talk about that top 5 pick because I'm going to follow up with that question. And it's a player we talked about before we went live. But what would you do? Would you invest that 15 would you invest that $15-ish million a year into a Juju, or would you invest that second first round pick in? They're probably not going to get out of the top 10, right? Jalen and
Sure.
Jamar Chase. So would you invest that second first into a Devontae Smith, into a Rashad? You probably wouldn't want a Rashad Bateman because he's more of that prototype of the boundary guy, right?
Sure.
So what would you do? Would you invest that second first round pick, or would you pay up and pay Juju?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always like to go the route of going younger because the Dolphins are going to be in the $45 to $50 million in cap space range. Only prominent free agents they really need to probably sign that I would sign at least is Devon Godchaux. Maybe Matt Breida if it's on the cheap, depending on what he does the rest of the year. But they don't have a lot of guys of their own that they have to take care of. So they're really good. They can hit the market like, look, we've made 2 runs at one guy that if we could get him somehow again this season. But call me crazy, but I would love to have Jadeveon Clowney in this defense as setting the edge, as a guy who can play the run. He's a better pass rusher than people give him credit for, just because people look at stat production, but there's pressures and there's QB hurries and QB hit rate and all those other things that matter. So that's a tough question. It really depends, but I wouldn't be opposed to doing both. Like I kind of said earlier, like. If you think that your defense is going to be up to speed, because we do have one of the better corner trios in football, right? And there's a lot of work that can be done. But, look, Jalen Waddle, if he did somehow fall, I love that guy. He's electric. He can create yards after the catch in chunks. You got Devontae Smith, who's more of a polished guy. But one guy that I'm higher on than most in the draft community is Gregory Rousseau from Miami, the pass rusher. I think the Dolphins are lacking a pass rush. He did have a 15.5 sack season last year, which was second in college football to Chase Young. He's very raw still. He's not refined. He needs to develop his pass rush arsenal. But, I always say people lie, numbers don't. You don't just walk in there and get 15.5 sacks in the ACC because you're lucky, So there's something there. Now, I hate that he opted out because –
He needs the season.
I would have loved to see him play, but there's going to be, So to answer your question, Juju's very proven commodity, but I still think the team needs a little bit more juice from the position. I'm looking for that electric game breaker, that Tyreek Hill. So you know what? If Jalen Waddle's off the board, give me a Rondale Moore. Find a way to get me that guy in the offense, and you put him in there with Preston Williams and Devontae Parker. And now you're cooking with something. I just think this offense needs a little bit more juice. I need that speed. I need that electric player. I need somebody who can make people miss in the open field, that elusivity, and the guys that are the home run threat every time they touch the ball. Look at like I keep pushing to the Ravens and they're one of the best teams in football. But look what Hollywood Brown's doing, opening up that offense.
Yeah.
He's
Devontae Smith. Yeah.
He's taking
Devontae Smith, right? It reminds me of what Devontae Smith is probably going to do.
And if that was the pick who the Dolphins took with the second first round they have, we should all be really happy. He's so polished. He's such a good route runner. He was the number 3 target for Bama this year, and he still had 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns.
See, here's what I'm going to say to you. This is okay. So we were running a ton of 11-man personnel on the offensively on the weekend, right?
Sure.
Yep. Patriots, right? So that Y receiver, I know we like to line Gesicki up as that Y guy sometimes, right? But my thing with, Devontae can be – here's my thing with Rondale Moore and taking – because if he was bigger, he would be my wide receiver 1. My issue is taking that small of a guy in like the top 10 where some people have him going, right? You know what I mean? Because I think, you just nailed it kind of with what you were talking about with Preston and Devontae. That limits Rondale. Rondale's only built for Y. He can't be an X or a Z in that 11-man personnel because of the size, right? And, the thing is with Devontae Smith, you can line him up as just like Preston or Devontae as the X, Y, or Z because of what we conceive is pretty much going to be a pretty stellar 40 time for Devontae, right? And you got the other guys that are already 4.4s anyways, right? So that's my thing. Like, if we're going to run heavy 11-man personnels offensively, I feel like Rondale Moore is limited for being a top, and I love his tape, bro. Like, if that man was 6 foot, 6'1", 200 pounds, give me him all day if it ain't who we're about to talk to with the top 5 pick or Penei Sewell, right?
Sure.
So I'm kind of with you there in terms of like, I'm younger. Give me, and here's another thing, and this is what I said about Jerry Jeudy. If he could fall to us at 18, which he almost did, kinda. The one thing you can't put, and I even said this about Jedrick Wills because I was a Tristan Wirfs guy. He was my OT1, but I really like Jedrick Wills because this is what I said to everyone. You cannot. There's no tape. There's no evaluation. There's nothing, and there's no price you can put on chemistry. And when you got Jedrick, who watched his blind side, and now you got Devontae Smith, who, going back to when they were freshmen, that's who we won the national championship with, right? So, I don't think you could – if that guy's sitting at 15, man, I think you pull the trigger, and I think you are around to something. And I think even – let's talk about this right now. I think even with the defensive pick, it might be sexy if we're high. So let's talk about – you're a Penn State fan. You told me before we went live. I personally think Penei Sewell is probably the best offensive tackle and maybe the best player I've seen on tape in maybe like 10 years.
Sure.
But, watching a Landon Roberts, watching Jerome Baker, stat sheet aside, watching their indecisiveness, watching their inability with read and recognition, especially in the RPO. Like I said, he was Jerome Baker, we talked before we went live, whether Tooney was pulling all the way to the right or he's getting to the second level, he was taking Jerome Baker out. And as was Andrews, their center, when he got to that level. Let me ask you this, man. You got a top 5 pick, Penei Sewell or Micah Parsons is sitting there. Who are you taking and why?
Yeah, I'm taking Micah Parsons, and there's a couple reasons why. First of all, we all saw the tape, and we traded Raquan McMillan away for a 4th-round pick. And at the time, I kind of liked it because I like to be a hoarder of draft picks, but he was a very one-dimensional run stopper. But God, could we have used him on Sunday? And we heard all this smoke and fire about a Landon Roberts. I think he was the worst player on the field for the Dolphins on Sunday on both sides of the football. He was just washed out. Now he's in concussion protocol. He's only on a 1-year contract, and they might sign him back for the cheap to be a depth piece, but he ain't going to be the starter. And another reason behind this is because I was so impressed with the Dolphins' rookie offensive lineman on Sunday. Austin Jackson played a clean game. I think he gave 0 pressures.
Zero hurries.
So smooth, and that's why that athletic profile that he brought to the table was really enticing when they drafted him. I think a lot of people are like, oh my God, the Dolphins got 2 at 5, and holy crap, why'd they draft Austin Jackson at 18? Well, look, Austin Jackson in his first game was better than Larry Tunsil was early here in Miami. No penalties. He was flawless in pass protection. He's going to get stronger. His feet and his footwork are amazing.
Beautiful. I sorry to cut you off, Neal, but
no,
I was one of those people who said you could get him at 26 because I had a 2nd-round grade on him. I have an offensive tackle big board, he was my 5th best left tackle. Sure. I even liked the prospect of a Lucas Niang better than because Lucas Niang, without the durability issue, I thought could be the best tackle in the draft class. But Austin Jackson, the one thing I always highlighted and I always say, the quote from me is, this man slides in and out of his pass and run sets like he's on skates, like a figure skater on skates, man. Like, it's beautiful to watch. My thing was he didn't have I didn't see it until we heard in training camp when he ripped Raekwon Davis's jersey off. I didn't see that violent streak like what you saw with Robert Hunt, right? I didn't see because, I didn't see effectiveness in the run game, and that's because USC didn't really run to his side a lot. And then number 3 was I didn't notice that anchor strength. Like when you look at AJ Epinesa or when you look at the guys who beat him, Bradley and I, and also what's the one from Notre Dame, Okwara. those are power guys, right? They're not athletic, bendy guys. They're more power guys. So that's why I thought he might struggle. But, I said this before after training camp reports came out, and I'll say it now in front of you. I got to eat crow because I thought he had the ceiling of a guy in 2 or 3 years when he developed that grown man strength because he's still so young. The scary thing is look at his size and he doesn't have that grown man strength yet because of his age, right? Me and you both know what that is. Right? You developed that in your mid-20s, right? Sure. So he doesn't have that yet. And so, I got to eat crow a little bit. Here's the thing. I don't know if you saw the PFF grades. I agreed with them with Jerome Baker, Landon Roberts, a few other spots. I did not agree with them how poorly they graded out Austin Jackson because I only saw 2 brain farts. I only saw when Chase Winovich beat him to the outside for a 2-yard loss on Howard, and then that play where the sack ended up being attributed to Fitzpatrick where he got put down to his knees and then Eric Flowers got beat by that Devon guy or what Devon, I forget what his name is, some jabroni that I'll never remember again, right? But what I'm sitting here saying is, man, I noticed with Solomon Kinley pulling to the left, especially 4 or 5 times he was having issues. Like Adam Butler was having his way with him in the middle and Ted Karras as well. But I'm right there with you, bro. I think that offensive line, never mind reaching a ceiling in 2 or 3 years. We might have something special in 2 or 3 years because you said something right then and there that I never thought of, and you're right. He did play better than what Laremy Tunsil played in his first game because Laremy Tunsil was even getting yellow laundry back then, right?
Oh, my. He was a disaster on the penalty flag front early. But, look, like you just said it, Austin Jackson's a baby. That's the most encouraging thing. This guy just had his first offseason program, which was greatly altered because of COVID-19, right? Like next year, he'll probably be back to our normal regimen. And, look, Pro Football Focus, they do a great job. Their grades aren't the end all be all. They have a very, sophisticated rating system. Sometimes you got to just trust the eyes and what you see on tape. And Austin Jackson was the best player on the Dolphins offense on Sunday. I mean, that's it. Him and Myles Gaskin to me were the 2 guys. And Solomon Kinley, I think, got a really good Pro Football Focus grade, and he deserves a pat on the back, man. 4th round.
He did well. He did very well.
Yeah, the Dolphins moved up in the 4th round to get him. They liked a lot about him. He's a mauling, road grade. And the beauty of this all is I still really believe that Robert Hunt, whether it's on the left or right side at guard, is going to be almost a Pro Bowl caliber player in the very near future. Mm-hmm. So, I think Jesse Davis is the veteran, and they didn't want to go with 3 rookies. And look, Robert Hunt's raw, and he needs a lot of work, and we knew that going into it. Mm-hmm. But like the thing I urge is don't be discouraged off of 1 week of football. Like this is a lot of these guys, it's their first introduction to the NFL. Like our rookie class overall is getting praised nationally how they play. Yeah. Like, I mean, you look at, Raquan Davis probably had the worst game of any rookie on our team, if we're being completely honest. And it was a little underwhelming. And look, the Patriots just got out. They were out. We got out coached. We got out.
Dude, it's the best interior in the NFL as well. Can we between Shaq Mason, Mark Andrews, and Joe Tooney? It's the best interior in the NFL, man.
And everyone's too quick to bury Cam Newton. The guy's a great football player. He has been for a long time. And look, the Patriots had a good scheme. Like, remember at this time last year, we were coming off a 59-10 loss to the Baltimore Ravens. And I sat on my couch thinking, wow, like what just happened? And Minka got burnt for 80 yards on a touchdown to Hollywood Brown. And I'm like, this is the worst ever. So we were very competitive against the best coach in the history of the NFL in Foxborough against the Patriots. And we have a tough Buffalo Bills team coming in this week. But, I think what we all have to do is weather expectations. Like we talked about this before we came on, but look at the Chiefs with Pat Mahomes. Look at the Ravens with Lamar Jackson. Look at the Saints' loaded roster. We're not competing with those guys this year. And if you entered this season thinking the Dolphins were a legit Super Bowl contender, more power to you. But I know that you're a favorite Simpsons homer because that is asinine. We hear the old adage, Rome wasn't built in a day. There's a lot of work to be done. The Dolphins are going to have $50 million in cap space, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, loaded with draft picks. Like, the rookies playing well is one of the most positive things you can see. It's going to take – we had 12 new starters on Sunday. Yeah. It's going to take time to gel. It doesn't just happen overnight.
It was the second or first most in the NFL, right?
Yeah, we're the youngest team. We literally have one player on our team over 30, which is Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
And like whether Ryan Fitzpatrick played well or not, you see people, some of his interceptions weren't on him, and that's true. But at the end of the day, what Ryan Fitzpatrick does doesn't really matter. The future is with Tua. They want to see this offensive line being able to protect, and we saw that on Sunday. And if they keep improving, I think when you see week 3 after we play Jacksonville, there's going to be a long break for the Dolphins. And after that game, depending on how Ryan Fitzpatrick plays this weekend and that Thursday night football against Jacksonville, if he played like he did on Sunday and turns the ball over, we're going to see Tua
it's
sooner
over.
or later.
Yeah, it's over.
It's going to come.
Me and my co-host even talked about this privately, and I wish he was here. And me and you talked about this before we went live. We can account for. I know you said you're not a ref, but even you agreed. That was a pretty physical play on Gesicki by Juwan
Robbed him.
Williams.
Pass interference 10 out of 10 times. Not even close.
And we can both agree that people who are sitting here and saying, oh, even throwing to Preston when he slipped, that's tight coverage, you shouldn't be going there. Well, the next gen stats tell you he's being pressured on almost 33% of his plays. And Preston was only getting about 1.2 yards of separation. So that's going to be how many nice catches did Devontae make before he went out, and how many of them were tight window, what you would consider tight window throws? Most of them. He made like 3 or 4 catches before he went out, and like literally 3 or 4, almost all of them were basically tight window, what you would consider tight window. There was only 2 really open tight window, non-tight window throws I can remember off the top of my head, and that was the field goal drive. Preston had that 18-yard gain. He was wide open, and I think he came out of the slot or something. And then, Preston had a wide open. He came from the boundary, and he got open for 18 yards, like coming on a post route. And then Devontae came out of the slot and beat Gilmore, smoked him with his route running, the crispness of it, and he was open. Other than that, everything else was tight window, bro. Like even Mike Gesicki couldn't create separation, right? Like, I mean, I don't think people, Tua wouldn't have fared any better, my friend. And under those circumstances, it would have, Jordan Howard averaging 0.9 yards. They really didn't get away from the 2 tight end personnel until the second half. We only had 1 minute and 25 seconds of possession in the third quarter because they dominated. And here's another thing I want to hit you with, Neal. And this is why people are saying, oh, you can't score 11 points and win the game. Well, I say to those people, well, last year on the road, opening week, Green Bay won a rival game on the road against Chicago 10-3. The Patriots and the Patriots won a Super Bowl 13-3 over the Rams. Sure. What did they do, right? Against the Rams, they isolated the run, right? They wiped out Todd Gurley and who's the guy they brought in that year that was running behind Gurley because of his knees, and he was killing the playoffs, remember?
Was it C.J. Anderson?
Yeah, C.J. Anderson. Yeah. So they took him right out of the game plan, right? And for me, 11 points, people want to call 11 points unacceptable. 217 yards and 3 touchdowns is unacceptable to me, especially when we know. Here's the thing, Neal. We do a keys to victory thing here on Friday. We said stop the run was number 1. Make Cam feel uncomfortable early and often was number 2. And number 3 was win the trench war against that interior, right?
Yeah. If I had to summarize the game in one word, it'd be uninspired. I think it looked like they played a very uninspired game. They fought tough. They were physical. That was good to see. They're way more physical than they were the year before. But there was something lacking on the energy front. And like for where I stand with a lot of it is, I think we've been all thinking that Jakeem Grant's going to be this playmaker for years, but we're not seeing that. The one punt that he went back 6-7 yards on, and he's really not doing anything in the passing game, except he had that pretty cool play with Albert Wilson against the Raiders last year. But other than that, like it's for me, it's time for him to put up or shut up. If he can't start making plays, because we need his speed in the offense, Lynn Bowden, Malcolm Perry, get these guys active on game day. Get them and give them a chance. Like, to me, the offense needs some speed infused into it, no matter what, especially at the receiver. Your quarterback can't win if there's no separation created and that on a consistent basis. Look, good news is Devontae looks like he's healthy. He practiced in pads today. The first half, what he had 4 for 48, and then he went down pretty early. I mean, he was on pace to have a 100-yard day. And for whatever reason, he can just get the best of Stephon Gilmore when he's on the field. And Gilmore's not, without question, the best corner in football. So that's very encouraging to me. Which the injury bug gets him again, and there's going to be a point where, like, God, man, I actually really, really like Devontae Parker, and we need him healthy to have a shot at anything. But this offense just played really uninspired. But, like you said, the defense gave up 200 yards rushing and were just gouged. I mean, early when Cam Newton was hitting those big holes and just running through, and he was playing very inspired football. So that's what, I could tell that he was fired up. I predicted before the year he was going to be the comeback player of the year. And I know that a lot of people thought maybe Alex Smith coming back. I think the Patriots are winning the division. I think they're the best team in the division because I don't think Cam Newton's a downgrade from what Tom Brady was last year. I think he might be even better. He had a year to rest. And look, Tom Brady just doesn't. He didn't look great on Sunday in Tampa. Look, he's probably the GOAT, as much as it pains me to say it. But, the Patriots are going to be a better team than given. Now, the tough part for me is that I think we kind of let them off the hook. And that one call didn't help because you get the ball at the 1 yard line there, you score a touchdown, you got a couple timeouts in your pocket. Who knows what can happen? I'll never crap on Ryan Fitzpatrick. In his brief tenure here in Miami, he's one of my favorite players I've ever cheered for here. I love the guy. I'll say this, though. One thing I kind of noticed is that he looked a little awkward throwing the football. He looked a little different, like he wasn't getting as much zip.
In his release, right? I noticed that too, actually, a little bit. I finished watching the game for a second time last night, and I actually noticed that too. It looks like, I don't know how to describe it. It looks like he was trying to put, I don't know, man. I noticed it in his release, like in his motion is where I noticed it. And I don't know whether it was him. I don't know whether my best guess was it looks like he was trying to muster up as much as he could.
Sure. Yeah, it looked like his arm was like maybe had. I'm sorry, I'm walking to get a charger because I didn't know how fast it would amateur hour here. But I didn't know. I guess maybe it looked like he had a little dead arm from camp. To be honest, it looked like he was throwing the ball a bunch and he just didn't have as much zip. But look, Ryan Fitzpatrick's such a fun player to get you to bridge you to Tua. I have nothing but good things to say about the guy. He's going to be fun to watch. And look, we're going to learn a lot about this team this week. They have a really tough team coming in here. The Bills are a good team, and Josh Allen is playing better football. For people like me who gave him a hard time during the draft process because of the level of competition he played and all that yada yada, he's looked good. And the Bills, their defense is awesome. They have a good defense, so I think the Miami's in for a real good test here, and it's going to be really interesting to see how they respond at home. Because look. They know how the game went. They have a bad taste in their mouth just as much as we do as fans. And I really believe that we're going to see them come pretty fired up here on Sunday. And look, Ryan Fitzpatrick, we always heard the Fitz tragic. And there's the good season and there's the bad season. The reality of it is if you're a Dolphins fan, you might be pretty happy if Ryan Fitzpatrick falls on his face here the next couple of weeks because that gets you to Tua faster. And they didn't just cut Josh Rosen because they thought they were, they didn't want to pay him and they didn't want him to get an opportunity. That meant to me that Tua's health is really good. If you talk to people who are connected there in Miami, the people are raving about Tua. Not just what he's doing on the field and his athletic and mobile, his athletic ability, his mobileness, and he's just such a student for the game. Like you'll even see things on Twitter now about how he was replaying the game on the sideline and all of this stuff. I really think, and then when people are all getting rid of, all Chan Gailey, let's fire him after 1 week. Chan Gailey wasn't brought here for Ryan Fitzpatrick. He was brought here for Tua. So we gotta have expectations that are fair. We can't think the Dolphins are just going to walk into Watson to Foxborough and the Patriots are going to lay down and we're going to beat them. They have to play good football, and they're way ahead of this, the curve where they were at this time last year. I mean, I forget what the numbers were, but their first 3 games were like the biggest point differential in NFL history. They'll fight Buffalo hard on Sunday. I don't know if they win the game. To be honest, if I had to pick, I'd probably pick Buffalo. But I think they fight hard, and they might start the season 0-2. Then they get out. What is it? Is it in Jacksonville the Thursday night? I think the primetime game.
Yeah, it's in Jacksonville. It's in
It's in
Jacksonville.
Jacksonville. You know, I like look.
Because I know
Jacksonville's
someone going to the game. Actually, it's in
that's
Jacksonville.
cool. Yeah, but like, look. There's a lot to be encouraged about. There's a lot to be, a lot of work to be done, a lot of wood to chop. We're far from a finished product, but like what you're going to see is just like we saw last year, right? You're starting off a disaster, and by week 17, me included, I'm chanting Brian Flores for Coach of the Year, right? So he did a great job of weathering the storm of the bad play. And, I still think the Dolphins are a team that's going to win anywhere between 7 to 9 games. I think their best football is ahead of them. I think they're going to be a playoff contender next year. And then the year after that, they're going to be really dangerous. And, that's all we can hope for. But you got to trust the process. You can't just expect immediate results. There's going to be growing pains when you're the youngest team in football. Again, only one player over 30 years old. That to me is like one of the most mind-blowing stats. That reminds me of the stat I heard the other day that Larry Fitzgerald has more career tackles than drop passes in his NFL career. Like, just things when I hear it like that are just nuts. But like to have only one player of 30 years on your roster, it's incredible. And that's why, they still have great cap space. They have great draft resources. This is just the first step. And I think what we want to see is the wins and losses don't matter. If like for me,
I know what you mean. Yeah. It's about growing and developing this year and getting your ducks in a row, basically.
Yeah, it'd be fun if they snuck in the playoffs and upset someone and won their first playoff game in 20 years. And trust me, I'd be the first guy, and I'd have to call to work probably for a day or two because of the hangover I had. But the reality of it is that it probably won't happen this year. But I think that could definitely happen next year. Just trust the process, be patient, and don't kill each other on Twitter. I used to jump in there and get in those arguments and be one of the most hot-headed Dolphin fans there is. But look, we're all cheering for the same team. And then when Tua gets in there, for the love of God, if he throws an interception, please don't burn his jersey on social media.
Oh, brother, there were already people saying he was a bust after one practice. There were people out there saying, oh, if he can't beat out Fitzpatrick, he's not worth a 5 pick. There's just, it's like the Rosen truthers shifted to that camp now, bro. And they're mixed in with the people that wanted Justin Herbert. You know what I mean? Like, I've never, honestly, bro, because I know you're on Twitter a lot, just like me. There's divisiveness in other, teams' fan bases, obviously. But over a guy like Josh Rosen, who gave you literally nothing on tape, who gave you nothing in terms of productivity or tangible production in the win column, and the people that would go to war and die on the hills for him, my friend, I get it if you know the kid. I get it if you're related to the kid. I get it if you grew up with the kid. But if you're some Joe Schmo who only pays attention to Miami Dolphins football, and you're going on Twitter and going to war with the guy who gave you that, I'm sorry. But you don't have a ton of credibility with me, especially when it comes to the quarterback position moving forward, bro.
Sure. So, I still think the trade for Josh Rosen was a good trade at the time because we didn't have a franchise quarterback, and we had no idea that
it was low risk.
We had no idea we were going to get Tua the next year, right?
Yeah.
With that said, look, Josh Rosen has 16 career starts. He's been horrific. 2 franchise have passed on him, and now he's sitting in the crowd while Tom Brady and Drew Brees face off on Sunday. And look, the guy just doesn't have it. We can all say that. The thing I hate is when people say that he wasn't given a fair shot, in Miami, because they benched Ryan Fitzpatrick for him, and they went to DC to play a bad Redskins team, and Josh Rosen was horrific, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick came in and led the team to almost a win. Then they called that tanking 2-point conversion. And I joke when I say that, but it was a horrible play call. But like, look, the guy had his chance, and then he went to Dallas, and no one did him any favors. They, I think Preston dropped a touchdown on him, but at the end of the day, he proved he's just not the guy. And look, why waste a roster spot if Tua's healthy? Does the fan base really want Tua to be the 3rd quarterback and Rosen to be the guy that goes in? Because I sure as hell don't. I'm being patient with Tua, but I don't know if he's playing at a game where there's fans. I'm hopping on a plane and I'm heading there and I'm watching his first start. That's, we haven't had that type of player. I honestly think in my fandom of 34 years since Ricky Williams for me, I haven't been this excited about a player that we've had. And, sure, people say I'm a Dolphins fan and I'm a Dolphins homer. And yeah, sure. I will say that Dan Marino is better than almost anyone. And, I'll have those arguments with, for fun. But at the end of the day, my love for Tua was out there way before the Dolphins drafted him. In fact, the only reason we have him is because of a hip injury. Because I'm telling you right now, I don't care what the season Joe Burrow had. If Tua was healthy, the Bengals would have taken Tua. People can sit there and they'll cuss you out maybe in the comments of this. Tua was a generational prospect to me. The way he moves in the pocket, the way he manipulates the defenders with his eyes. He throws with such anticipation and touch. His downfield accuracy is downright lethal.
It's
And
ridiculous.
the dude's a winner. And there's a reason that he's on the Gillette commercials, right? There's a reason that
he's the best a man can get, bro.
Yeah, there's a reason that he was selling jerseys out like left and right. All that was because he's a bona fide superstar, and the Dolphins are lucky to have him. But let's be patient. Let's not rush him in there. We got to do it right. You want to make sure the line's there. You want to make sure he has targets because, you said it earlier, right? If he's throwing and Devontae Parker's out of the game and the only receiver he has is a legitimate threat is Preston Williams, it's going to be tough for him to be successful. You need weapons. And we need Mike Gesicki to become that guy who's relied upon every game and not just make that miraculous catch here and there.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Gesicki here, because before we went live, I told you about the other platform I came from before I started this channel. And even back then, November, December, January, I was highlighting guys that were going to be in this draft class already. Cause like I told you, I'm a Phil junkie. I was doing the draft thing over there, et cetera, et cetera. So I was highlighting guys like Micah Parsons, who you are obviously very familiar with.
Sure.
I was highlighting obviously Penei Sewell because we didn't have our tackle yet, right, at the time. If
Yep.
I was highlighting running backs that'll be coming out, okay, like Travis Etienne,
Sure.
Those type of guys, et cetera, et cetera. One guy, and Micah Parsons, like I mentioned, was someone I was very, very high on. I was also even highlighting Trey Lance before he became Twitterland's favorite little prospect all over there, bro. I'm not my word. But another guy I highlighted to people was Pat Fearmuth. As a Penn State fan and a guy who watches a lot of film as well, can you give everyone a little bit of a background? Because Pat Fearmuth, because he could be, if they're picking in the 15 to 20 range, he could be a realistic option, especially if Gesicki doesn't take another step. And I know you'll highlight it, blocking alone. But can you, because it obviously seems, with the Adam Shaheen edition, with the snaps that Durham Smythe got, they recognize that they kind of don't have that guy yet there, that 3-down tight end who's so versatile. You don't know whether he's blocking or whether he's going to go out in open space and make you pay for it, right? Sure. So can you highlight, because I think he's better than Kyle Pitts, and I'm a Gators fan.
Sure.
So can you highlight Pat Fearmuth for everyone a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. He's one of the most complete tight ends we've seen come out in quite some time. One of the things that initially jump out, obviously, is that he's a red zone threat and he is a touchdown machine. You don't get dubbed the baby Gronk for nothing, even though, we also did hear that Harold Miner at one time was called Baby Jordan. But, Pat Freiermuth, he's a monster in the red zone. One of my favorite things about him is he's the total package because he can block, he can break tackles, he can catch passes in the short and intermediate game. And in the modern day NFL, a young quarterback's best friend is the tight end. Look at Pat Mahomes in Kansas City with Kelsey. You look at Lamar with Mark Andrews. We saw it with Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz. Young quarterbacks love to have tight ends. Look, Miami hasn't had a dynamic tight end in a long time. I know we were all ready to put gold jackets on Rady McMichael when we had him. And he was a good player. But and look, I think Mike Gesicki is a good football player. I think he has a specific skill set that creates some mismatches and helps you. But, I'm never going to let a good player prevent me from taking potentially a great one, right? And I think that Freiermuth could be, right now, if you ask me who the best tight ends in football, it's Kittle, it's Kelsey, it's Andrews, Ertz is probably sniffing around 4. Freiermuth could get in that category pretty quickly. I think he's in offensive weapon. And, I just he's my 9th overall prospect on my early draft grade. So I actually have him cracking my top 10. And, if he's a guy that's in that pick range at 15 and he's on the board, if that's what the Dolphins are drafting at, and he's there staring him in the face, I think you have a hard time passing up for him. They do like Durham Smythe a lot. I think that he will have a roster spot on this team one way or another. And, he's a adequate football player. But if you can get Pat Fearmuth and Gesicki as a pair, I mean, you have two cats that have different traits that can really, really help the passing game. And look, Gesicki ain't going to block. We know that. He's got a place in this NFL. I mean, some of the catches he was making on Sunday, like the one catch he made near the sideline, was nuts. Mm-hmm. And give him the credit. He drew that pass interference. It might not have been called, but he drew it. And I think that Ryan Fitzpatrick and him have a decent, little mojo together. So I like Gesicki. I'm not rushing him out the door, but again, if a great player falls into your lap and you sit there and you look at your roster and the guy you have is pretty good, don't hesitate to make that pick.
Let me ask you this too, true or not, because, this is one thing I was taught in rep even before I went into high school and then went on and backed up in college. You've watched a lot of tape as well. Let's go to that Gesicki DPI. You've seen it on tape before, and I know you've heard quarterbacks talk. So can you just basically confirm what I'm saying here? True or false? Quarterbacks basically are sometimes coached or taught, like how I was and how I've seen other quarterbacks talk about, where if they see a guy getting mugged, they throw to the area to get the flag.
Absolutely. And I think the savviness of Ryan Fitzpatrick, he was probably thinking that. Look, it was a horrific no call. I haven't heard anyone who said it. I mean, I think that Tony Romo on the broadcast, I mean, there was a couple plays that were really questionable calls. Look, and no one's going to shy away from this. If there's any team that gets some help from the Zebras, it's the New England Patriots. It's been that way for a while. You don't hit Brady even close to being later, you're going to get that 15-yard flag. But God, I think that was awful. And what I think the worst part of it all is not only did they miss the call that should have been made, but as I think the Dolphins Patriots game was the fourth most watched game of Sunday.
Yeah,
let them play football. That makes that game exciting. Now everyone else is flipping probably to the red zone channel to see what's going on in another game. But that was a it's frustrating.
13.5 million viewers, right?
And you want to remind me of, I don't remember if you remember when we lost to the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger fumbled in the end zone, and we clearly, I think it was Paul Soliai, recovered it, but the referee said there was no evidence of us recovering. It was one of the worst calls I've seen since that day. And I actually still to this day, because I've watched the game 3 times now, actually, it shows you that I'm a loser. But, at the end of the day, I'm still shocked that it wasn't called. But, one thing I will say that's contrary to that, even though it won't be popular, is I was actually pretty happy with the lack of flags in the game. They were letting them play a little bit more. Now, that still was obvious pass interference, but in recent years in the NFL, man, whenever a corner gets up in someone's face, there's like a flag, and they let them play a little bit. And, I like the brand of football that we saw overall on Sunday. Because, I kind of came in worried that all these teams didn't have training camp and they didn't have the preseason and it was going to be sloppy. I thought I saw some really, really good football. I don't know if you watched the Saints-Bucks at 4 o'clock. That game was really fun.
I was live. We do a post-game show.
Okay.
And I was live and I was watching it in the background while we're doing it. But that's what I wanted to say to you, too, highlight there, because that should have been their 4th DPI in the second half alone, right? Yeah. And 2 of the 3 that were called were on Stephon Gilmore. When you look at the separation, when you go to the next gen stats, Neal, and you look at the DPIs that started to rack up in that second, and again, we only had the ball for 1:25 in the third quarter. So this is all just in the fourth, essentially, right?
Sure.
So when doesn't that also go to show just how tight that press man coverage was all around and how suffocating and smothering it was to our, and basically, here you go. Perfect example. You watched, I'm guessing you watched a ton of Jordan Love film, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. So when he was at you, when he was his last year, okay, when he was
Yep.
played his last year, the one thing I kept highlighting to people that would take a crap on him was the lack of separation he had, and sometimes some of his picks where there's no one getting separation, I got to throw to the guy who has at least half a yard of separation. That was almost basically what Fitzpatrick was dealing with to an extent, where I'm only dealing with guys who are getting under 1.5 yards of separation. I got to make a choice of who's got the most separation. Right?
Yeah, I mean, breaking it down, like, to be honest, if it's not Devontae Parker, if it's not Preston Williams, I don't know much. I actually am a big fan of Lynn Bowden. I'm excited. I hope he's active this weekend. Yeah. I think Malcolm Perry shows some promise, but until they're active, I can't really talk about them. But if you think about Mac Hollins, Isaiah Ford, Jakeem Grant, look, Isaiah Ford had a really good week 17, had a few catches, but, there's nothing to be scared of. I mean, the Dolphins receiver core as a whole is probably below average with Parker and Preston Williams. If you take one of those guys out of the equation, it's one of the worst units in football. And, I'm just trying to be honest, and that's kind of how I see it. And I think there's no doubt that is going to be something that's going to be addressed this offseason. That's why when we were talking about it, I said, hey, they might sign Juju and draft someone. I think it's that bad where, look, Isaiah Ford could go, and would we really miss him? Could you see Jakeem Grant being a potential cap cut because we have Lynn Bowden and Malcolm Perry to maybe take his role as the return man who adds a little speed and diversity to the offensive game plan? Mac Hollins, I think he's only here on a 1-year deal. And, he's a guy that, he's been, he can play. He's an NFL wide receiver, but he's like your number 4 or 5 guy. He ain't going to make a lot of plays for you. So at the end of the day, the Dolphins have a lot of work. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he was running uphill. The Patriots secondary is one of the best units in football, and our receivers were getting open. And, there's no doubt about it. The Patriots still have some studs on that defense. People want to talk about Dante Hightower and Pat Chung. Well, Kyle Duggar, who they drafted from Lenoir Ryan,
he's a stud, brother.
He was great, and I consider him a very adequate replacement for Patrick Chung. Now, Dante Hightower is a good linebacker, has been for a while, but Bill Belichick can scheme his butt off to make sure that role is filled. They have some cats on that team that can play. They were prepared. And, everyone who thought that there was a potential that the Patriots would be bad enough to get Trevor Lawrence, I think that was crazy. They're good in the trenches. They're too well coached. And Bill Belichick's not the kind of guy that's going to do that. His legacy means a lot to him. Yeah. He doesn't want a 3-win season under his belt. You don't win 20 division championships in 21 years and have that kind of mentality. There's no way that guy, he's the kind of guy that would probably tell Robert Kraft to go F himself and not come back if they asked him to do something like that.
Brother, I thought it was going to be Jacksonville vying for that tank for Trevor. Then I see that comeback. I'm like, oh, maybe I was wrong. But Neal, am I wrong in saying this is another reason why a guy I was banging the table for when he was still on the board in day 3, James Proche from SMU was sitting right there, and they decided to go with Blake Ferguson, a long snapper. And now this week they're protecting the long snapper on the practice squad that they just called up. Even Tyler Johnson was around when they were picking late. And I know he's banged up, so hindsight is 20/20, I guess. But James Proche, at least, look at how good, Let's look at the Ravens, for example, right?
Sure. Yep.
The Ravens are a team where they can keep loading up pieces, but what do they keep doing? They had a Devin Duvernay, James Proche, and J.K. Dobbins to go along with what they've already been stacking up for when they got needs where they could have tried to replace Marshall Yanda. They could have tried to replace in the draft a Michael Pierce. Instead, they went out and got an edge guy with Calais Campbell. But even they're recognizing, hey, if we got a top 15, top 10 defense, but we got a powerhouse offense and we can put up more points than you, how are you going to beat us? And this is my issue with this. We're coming down with, I was one of those people. I had a lot of hopes for Kirk Merritt. And I know before he got hurt, if you do the timeline, like I've said before, it looks like he got hurt right after that first practice Fitz missed with the 11-11s, because for about 2 to 3 days before that, he was popping up each day in the training camp report on the end of Tua Tagovailoa throws. So, I found it also curious that he was sitting out for 7 to 9 days while they were out here cutting fresh bodies before cut day was even coming up at that position. So my question to you is, A, have you heard anything from anyone inside of Pro Football Network or anyone regarding Kirk Merritt? And B, what do you think about the fact that, because also even look at Matt Collins, look at Malcolm Perry. Tua was the guy who was throwing to most of those guys in camp. It wasn't Fitz. So do you think they're kind of sliding those guys in case the transition comes and Tua's got a few targets that he can be comfortable with?
Sure, yeah, a lot of layers there. For first of all, when you say James Prochet and the Ravens got him in round 6, I was like literally floored when I saw a long snapper. I'll bite that he is probably one of the best long snappers to ever play college football. But with that said, is he there in round 7? James Prochet is the starting punt returner for Baltimore. But, Baltimore's first class, might be the best team in the league when it comes to drafting. They've done it for so long. Ozzie passed on the torch to Eric DaCosta. That last Ozzie class, he left on top, giving them Lamar Jackson at pick 32, and then Andrews and Orlando Brown later. And God, they missed on Hayden Hurst, but you don't even remember that because how good their draft class is. But they were in position to take a Calvin Ridley or Derwin James practically with the pick they took Hayden Hurst. So obviously, historical good draft class. But, again, going to this Dolphins receiving core, I think they like Malcolm Perry a lot because of the things he can do. Like, you saw him in I think it was the Shrine game. He showed that athletic, ability, his ability to run. He's got some development as a receiver that he really needs to make. But, there's something they like there. But with Kurt Merritt, they liked him enough to keep him in the practice squad, which makes me think. But, they're not protecting him. But in today's NFL, it's tough. If you can't make it on a game day roster at a wide receiver, you get passed on from practice squad to practice squad, and it's really hard to get in there. I like Kirk Merritt too. I think he has a future on the NFL roster.
Let me just ask you this: do you think it's because it's a preseason where there's no tape of preseason games and there's really no media access? So you can hide a guy like that, or a Matt Cole who can do slot, punt return, kick return as well. You can hide them because there's really no info out there on them.
Winner, chicken dinner. I think the lack of a preseason prevents those off-season superstars. And, no one's had a chance to really showcase their talents. It's all been in practice. And, because of that, he probably hasn't gotten the most fair shake to prove it. And look, they're going to put people on there who can play special teams. And Matt Collins is a really good special teams player. It's unfortunate sometimes because I think we all get these draft crushes that just kind of go away, and you never really even see them make an NFL team and get an opportunity. And unfortunately, I'm not saying it, I'm not going to write the book on Kirk Merritt's career being over yet. He's a young guy, he's got a lot to prove, but I just don't see him getting a lot of play in Miami this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my man crush was back in October when I first started getting into this, when everyone was screaming, because if you remember back in October, we had like a number 3 or a number 4 pick. We were higher than 5. Everyone was like, oh, if Chase Young falls to us. And I was like, and then they're like, oh, if we miss Chase Young, AJ Epinesa. And I was one of the guys saying, well, don't worry about spending a pick on those guys. Wait around for Curtis Weaver. And that didn't really wind up well for me. I got the pick right, but I didn't get how it worked out. And let's talk about the receivers one thing, because there was the issue with Grant. And this is what I think a lot of people aren't taking into consideration is Grant, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I want to get your opinion on it, but does Grant seem more of a Tua Tagovailoa type of receiver to you? And what I mean by that is that shifty, quick guy who can get it, off the line, his hand technique and how he can get bumped really easily in the first 5 yards is a problem. But do you think he's a guy who will be more utilized by Tua Tagovailoa? Because he was, I know the All-22 just came out today, and I'm going to the All-22 hasn't even come out yet, if I remember correctly, last I checked. So, but even just a little from the broadcast angles, I was noticing that Jakeem Grant was getting separation and he was getting open.
Yeah, I think Jakeem
my question to you though is, do you think it's because Fitzpatrick has a history of he likes big-bodied receivers, he doesn't like little guys?
Yeah, I think when you play quarterback, you throw the ball to the people you trust, and I just don't know if Jakeem Grant's earned Ryan Fitzpatrick's trust yet, right? I do think he's a good fit for what Tua does, because it's kind of a joke at this point that Tua excels at throwing the slants to fast, speedy guys that can create yards after the catch. His placement puts the ball to them perfectly on the run, and then they can create yards after the catch. So I do think he's a good fit. I just don't think he's getting a lot of targets because Devontae and Preston have both earned Ryan Fitzpatrick's trust, and that's where he's going. And I think the third guy in the totem pole there is Mike Gesicki. So I think after those three guys get the football, there's not a lot of scraps left for anyone else. Because we are trying to become a run first team. You saw Myles Gaskin get a ton of carries. For whatever reason, Jordan Howard just wasn't getting it going. But Breida had a couple of nice runs. Pat Laird was out there. We were trying to develop the run for sure. Look, I said this kind of earlier, I like Jakeem Grant. I love him coming out of Texas Tech. I actually think I compared him to Victor Cruz, which is a lot of praise at the time. But, we need to see some of that talent and that speed equate to production, or, we're just spinning our wheels every offseason. I feel like every training camp, he's like the training camp MVP. Then it comes on game days, and you don't even see the guy make. He did have that one catch where he bounced off and created the first down, which was a pretty cool play for him. But I need to see a little bit more from him. I'm ready to see him catch some deep balls. Be a poor man's Tyreek Hill. If we don't see it this year, there's a couple guys that have heavy contracts going into next year. He's one of them. There's Jesse Davis. And I don't know what anyone thinks about Bobby McCain. He's transitioned to free safety. He's playing adequate. He's more of a nickel corner. He's got a $6 million, I think, cap relief if we release him. There's a couple guys that really just need to earn their keep this year, or the Dolphins will move on. I mean, I think that they've shown that with their front office that they'll move on from you if you don't fit in and you don't show the versatility that they need. And I don't think there's any difference here with Jakeem Grant.
What's your in terms of, do you think you look at this running game moving forward, do you think that's another position they're going to address in the draft? Because Breida's about to expire.
Yep.
Howard, we're going to see how it ends up going. And another thing that we talked about earlier, because you mentioned Robert Hunt, I had Robert Hunt graded as a guard. I didn't have him graded out as a tackle. And do you think the plan is eventually, when Eric Flowers' contract is up after 2 years, shift Kinley back to left and slide Hunt in that right guard?
Yeah, I think you could see that happen. And look, the Dolphins have been very strategic about how they've created these contracts. Like Jordan Howard, we can release after the season and save $5 million in cap space, I think, with no penalty. And Eric Flowers, I believe that we're paying him a lot of money up front. So if Robert, and I agree with you, I think Robert Hunt and Solomon Kinley are the guards of the future here. I think that the Dolphins are really set up to create additional cap space if needed. So, is Eric Flowers long for the team? I actually, I know he had the one penalty. I think he looked massive out there. And I actually think he played a pretty good football game. I think he's an improvement to what we had at left guard. So I'm not I'm not rushing him out the door either. But Jordan Howard, look, this team needs more dynamic. I think we all wanted J.K. Dobbins in round 2 or had a running back we like. But you named the guy that I want. Give me Travis Etienne anytime. He's electric. He's got great contact balance. His acceleration through a hole is awesome. His game breaking speed. And I actually give him props for returning for his senior year. I thought that was really cool that he did that. I'm a Travis Etienne guy first and foremost, but then another guy that I freaking love is Naji Harris. You talk about a monster who can do it all. The guy can catch passes. If you blitz, he's going to light you up too. And again, I want Tua to be comfortable. Get guys that he likes, that he knows, that he's familiar with. So I think the Dolphins could easily spend a top 50 pick on a running back. And I think they need it. I think Myles Gaskin's proving here that he can be the number 2. If Matt Breida can resign for a couple of years for the cheap, why not? Maybe if Jordan Howard doesn't show that he has gas in the tank, and I'm not running these guys off after 1 week. Jordan Howard's one of the most productive running backs in football over the last 10 years, right? So, but if you have to move on from him, but I think that the cool thing is there's so much flexibility the Dolphins have. And then let me say one thing that we haven't touched on here is that one guy on the defense side of the ball that popped for me and made a couple game-changing plays was Christian Wilkins. And I think we all did. Yep. We all wanted to
best player on the field.
Yeah, we all said that we wanted to see more out of him. There was like a freaking 5-minute stretch where he looked like freaking Aaron Donald out there knocking people's head off. And that was really good to see because it's going to be people like Christian Wilkins, Austin Jacksons of the world, and we haven't even talked about our secondary because the Patriots didn't try to I don't know if it's out of respect, but they didn't really throw at Howard or Byron Jones. But God, man, the guy who, when I've watched whatever I've seen of the Dolphins this year, as good as Howard and Byron Jones have been, Noah Igbenogany to me just looks, and the guy's, I don't know if you know, he's like the youngest guy that ever played in a football game ever.
And I saw that stat come out, yeah.
The way he's built, the way he moves, I like Dolphin fans were talking about it this year. Is there a potential we can trade Xavier Howard, right? Or whatever that is. Well, if that dude lives up to his potential and he's a starting outside corner and it's him and Byron Jones and you get someone who's willing to give you a first-round pick for Xavier Howard in that contract, look, I'm an Xavier Howard fan. I think he's one of the best defensive playmakers in football. Do I have concerns about his knees? Absolutely, 100%. And the cap relief is massive if you move him. So keep an eye on Noah Igbenogany. I have a feeling – look, I have a real good feeling about this first round of this draft class. When you think about Noah, you think about Tua, and you think about Austin Jackson. And then I do think Robert Hunt's going to be a good guard. I think Raquan Davis is going to be a good interior defensive lineman that's going to develop. He's flashed top 10 talent.
And look at, Brandon Jones, man. When I watched him on tape, I told my co-host live and privately that I saw his best plays on tape are out of the box and in the slot, and that's where he was killing it when they put him out there, man. He's a perfect guy, he looks like he's, my co-host was right. He looks like he's going to be that Patrick Chung, that replacement for Eric Rowe eventually when they decide to move on, man. I was very, very impressed with Brandon Jones. He just seems like, I used to tease my co-host because he said a lot of people in this draft class in the safety position remind him of Rashad Jones. And he said that, he called him a more athletic version of Rashad Jones. And in terms of being around the football, I couldn't agree more with what I saw. On Sunday. Brandon Jones really, really impressed me.
Well, I was shocked about how much he was on the field. I didn't expect him to see that much playing time. And, he was playing like his hair was on fire. You saw the football and you saw 29 running in there. He also got hosed with a horrific penalty call and roughing the passer. That was just
he was just high on the pads, right?
Yeah, it looked like he just got the shoulder pad. And again, Tony Romo, Tony Romo is a national treasure, man. He is. I really enjoy him calling the games, but I don't think the Dolphins are going to have too many Romo games this year, unfortunately.
I want to ask you this before I forget. Devon Godshaw, we can probably agree he's going to price himself out of town, and he probably won't be back. All right. Would you?
I hope. It depends on what he wants.
He's not a zero. He's not a zero tech. Them putting him at a zero, he is not the ideal anchor. So let me ask you this. If Panay's gone, if Micah Parsons is gone, and you're sitting there at 6'7", do you think about Marvin Wilson from FSU?
I like Marvin Wilson a lot. Let me think about it. Yeah, he's probably my top interior defensive lineman. For me, that's a little rich, and I think that we've done that before. You know what I think about doing is in the top of round 2, getting Tyler Shelvin from LSU, who's a true zero technique. Got a little he's a big run stopper, but man, he can move for a 360-pound dude. I do think we need a zero tech, and Tyler Shelvin will be there in round 2. I don't know if you've ever really watched Jordan Davis from Georgia. He'll be there in round 2, but they need look, I think Devon Gauchow, because he was a 5th-round pick, has really had a good career in Miami. But, if he's asking for $8 to $10 million a year and you have Wilkins and Davis already on the roster, you're looking for a true run, stop, and zero. And I think one of the things that the Patriots attacked, and it's not that Devon Gauchow is not a good player, but he's not playing in the right position. They need that guy who's 340, 350 pounds that can eat a double team and free people up around them. They definitely need that on the defense. They don't have it on their roster. I mean, I think their biggest defensive tackle, and I think he's on the practice squad, is Benito Jones from Mississippi. Yeah. But, they need that guy, and it's never a sexy pick. But top 10 for Marvin Wilson for me, with a team that has drafted meat and potatoes for so many. You got to think, we took Christian Wilkins, and then we followed that up with Austin Jackson. I mean, obviously we got Tua, Davis, Hunt, Kinley. I think it's time to get those skill players. The good thing about a true nose tackle is that you don't have to break the bank for them. And, there's a good free agent class. I it's hard to keep up with it because so many people are resigning, already early this season. But, did the Falcons sign Grady Jarrett long-term, or did they just franchise him?
I don't know, actually.
Yeah, he'd be a great fit. I liked him. I know a lot of people coming in this season really like who's the guy that Cincinnati who got carted off? Was it
DJ Reader?
Yeah, he got carted off the field. It looks like his season. I think it might be over. But we need beef. We need a nose tackle for sure.
Were you impressed by, just a little bit off the Dolphins here? Were you impressed by Joe Burrow's game, especially that last drive?
Well, look, I think his last drive was really impressive, and I really liked his 23-yard touchdown run. But if you look out through the rest of the game, and look, the Chargers defense is good. Look, when someone's a high first-round pick, we all try to go in his corner and cheer for him. And I think Burrow's college football season at LSU is probably one of the best we've ever seen. That was an awesome comeback. Poor Bengals fans with the kicker. Something's always going in Cincinnati too. Mm-hmm. But I'll be honest. I thought throughout the first start, I was kind of a little underwhelmed. I mean, it's not like he's throwing to nobody. He has AJ Green. They have Tyler Boyd, John Ross, T. Higgins, Alden Tate. He's got a good running back in Joe Mixon. Look, I think Joe Burrow is going to be a pretty good NFL quarterback. But I said this during the draft process. I get scared of 1-year wonders.
Yeah,
I do, and
especially guys with that little arm strength.
Yeah, I really do, and I wish them the best. I always thought the Bengals are a pretty fun team to watch. I'm excited for tomorrow night's football game between the Bengals and the Browns. I can't wait.
The other thing is, Neal, no one took into context last year. I was the only one who I know, at least in the YouTube community, was talking about it. He was doing online correspondence. So he was a 1-year wonder, but he was also doing online correspondence. So he was all day. He was literally in the film room with the coaches studying the defenses and improving off the week before. Like, this guy, Tua, Herbert, Love, they were all in classes. And Joe Burrow was sitting with his coaches basically breaking down film, I want to ask you this, though. Just heading back to Cam Newton here for a sec. Sure. And now with us going against Josh Allen. Shaq Lawson today said in his Zoom, and this guy coming from Buffalo, Josh Allen is more athletic than Cam Newton, which we all knew. And he said that Josh Allen can run better than Cam Newton. Should that worry us, considering how effective that RPO was against us on Sunday heading into now week 2?
Oh, I'm concerned for sure. Josh Allen's been a Dolphins killer.
317 rushing yards in 4 games.
Yeah, look. The Bills to me are a playoff team. Sean McDermott's a great coach. Their defense is loaded, and you know what? They're 2 years ahead of us in their rebuilding process. So when we're talking about the Dolphins, this year being the better team than they were last year, and then next year being the team. The Bills are already in that transition. They had I sniffed the playoffs last year, and now, they're a really good team. And Josh Allen's better than I think a lot of us thought he was going to be. So, I really believe, I think the Bills are going to be a tough matchup. I think Josh Allen's going to be a tough matchup. The one thing I don't think they have is a great running back in Devon Singletary. if I'm a Dolphins defender and I've been on ESPN all week and NFL Network all week, seeing everyone talking about how we given up 200 yards and Cam Newton trashed us, and the disrespectful things that Cam said about them, maybe rightfully so, since we're knocking his chain off and all that good stuff. I'm pretty hungry, man, and I want to get up there. And here's the thing about Josh Allen: he fumbles a lot. I think he has 24 career fumbles, so he will put the ball on the ground. So when you're there, let's punch that bad boy out and get a couple turnovers. And I think the Dolphins are going to have to get a couple turnovers to win. And look, you paid all this money for Xavier Howard and Byron Jones. Put them on an island with John Brown. Put them on an island with Stephon Diggs, and let's play in the box and make Josh Allen beat us deep.
Yeah, and I was going to say to you, because I remember you were talking about Noah Benogany. Keep freezing. I'm after how good Nick Needham played last year, after how good the last couple of weeks of training camp was, to even people out here saying he was the best corner at training camp. Were you surprised that he got no snaps at corner and only basically 2 snaps on special teams on the weekend?
Very weird. It's one of the hardest things to put together coming out of the weekend. I think that maybe if you follow me on Twitter, you saw this, but I was kind of just hypothetical thinking that, the Dolphins are loaded at corner. Needham had some good tape. They could have been potentially shopping them to a cornerback needy team, but not playing them goes against the opposite of it. Very surprised, man. I don't know what to really say. I know Jamal Perry was out there a good amount.
He got kind of ate up a little bit when he got targeted too.
Yeah, so I think Nick Needham's a guy that, look, if you have a strength at corner, it's not a bad thing. And if you have 4 really good corners, it's not a really, it can help you out a lot. They asked Brian Flores about it in the presser, and he kind of gave one of those coach answers where they don't really tell you a lot. It'll be interesting to see what happens this week. If he has another week where he doesn't get a lot of snaps, something's fishy there, though, for sure.
Yeah, because especially considering how much dime and nickel personnel we were seeing on Sunday, and him not being out there, it just felt weird to me.
Yeah.
We're coming up here on the hour and a half mark, brother. Yep. I appreciate you for taking the time to come out here. You got any final thoughts? Anything you want to plug?
No, sure. Yeah. Well, go Pro Football Network. Check us out every day. We're delivering exceptional content. We have the Tony Paulines, the Ben Albrights of the world, just had added Anita Marks to the team. Kanata and staff are putting together a powerhouse team. Our draft simulator is a ton of fun to go in there, be the GM, make a bunch of picks, do it 150 times a day till you get the right pick. It's a lot of fun, man. A lot of good things going on that website. And just, every day new content too. You're not going to get stale and boring. Every day there's going to be something fresh and new. All the interactions wanted. I write draft articles twice a week. If there's something you want to see, something you want covered, shoot me a note, man. I'm always looking for ideas. But, I think what I want to say is, keep your expectations in check. Enjoy this ride. I think what we're going to see here is the foundation and the pillars are being built. And that was very important. Tua is going to come. Don't rush it. Sit back and enjoy it. If the Dolphins go into after Sunday, I promise you the sky's not falling. Nothing they're doing right now matters except seeing growth from their young players, seeing their investments playing well, because the future of this team is sitting on the bench, and he was going to get his chance, and that's when the real fun starts. But, Reason, I really appreciate you having on. We'll definitely do this again, man. It's always good chopping it up with you, and I really appreciate the time and the forum tonight for sure.
Appreciate you, bro. And, I agree, man. You're right. Especially with what you said earlier, before the season started, I said he's got a leash of 2 to 4 games.
Sure.
And, we can sit here and say, 2 of those 3 interceptions weren't on Fitz on Sunday. But even if he has another 3 interception game and 2 of those aren't on him, the numbers are just going to be piling up. And at the end of the day, I don't think this coaching staff is going to want, they're bringing in a rookie or not, I don't think they're going to want to let the season get away from them without at least trying. You know what I mean?
They did it last year, right? They did it,
yeah.
And they respect the hell to Ryan Fitzpatrick, but they did it last year. And here the difference is that I think if Tua gets it, right, Josh Rosen relinquished it after he got it last year.
Yeah.
I think after Tua gets it, and I'd still sign him for another year to be the backup next year, but I think Ryan Fitzpatrick's time playing quarterback in Miami is over.
Yeah, and I know he has no interest in coaching, but he'd be the ideal quarterback coach.
Yeah, love the guy, man. I think he's a great teammate to have. And if you watch the fun that him and Tua are having on the sidelines, but that matters, man. I think to have a good veteran presence, like the cool thing about Ryan Fitzpatrick, man, he's bounced around this league. He's been on a ton of teams, but everywhere he's went, he's been respected. I mean, I like he is the consummate pro. He's the consummate teammate. He's exactly the type of player you want Tua to learn from, because the reality is Tua has God-given traits that Ryan Fitzpatrick would dream of having. And, I think becoming a pro, and Tua's way advanced at this, he's like the Andrew Luck, like the prodigy of becoming a pro. He's been a pro his whole life. The way his dad pushed him, all he knows is being a pro, right? But learning it from a guy who's been in the league as long as Fitzpatrick. And I thought it was really cool that he did that one press conference with the Fitzpatrick jersey. It kind of just speaks to what Tua is as a dude, man. Like to be that cool Hawaiian guy, man, who's our quarterback. I couldn't be more excited about the future of this team.
Let me ask you this before you get out of here, because we talked about it a little bit earlier about when they got rid of Josh Rosen, about things they saw with Tua. One of the things me and my co-host, because he had that 25-yard scramble up the seam in 11-11s and stuff like that. Do you think they were not only surprised about how healed he was at this point in the process, but also because he didn't have a combine, of how quick, explosive, and athletic he actually is? Because if you go back to 2018, me and my co-host always talk about that play. That 40-plus yard run he had against LSU in 2018, where he was outrunning corners, he was outrunning safeties, linebackers. No one could catch up with them. Do you think that also factored in?
Yeah, I think Tua's special, man. I really do. I think he probably dedicated himself after he got hurt. Unparalleled. I think he, really, he just, when he's on the football field, like you'll hear the left-handed Drew Brees comparison a lot. Daniel Jeremiah, I think, is the one that kind of initiated that, and you'll see it the way he throws the ball. But the thing I've always said is the guy he reminds me of most is actually Russell Wilson, with his mobility, his ability to throw on the run, he can create his intangibles, all of that stuff when you put it in a blender. Look, if you're getting comparisons to Russell Wilson and Drew Brees, there's something there. But I think, Reese, I don't know about you, I'm floored by his recovery. When we drafted him, I thought they were going to put him on the IR for the whole year. I don't know. Kuiper, actually, who's a local guy here in Baltimore, went to the same high school as me. He was like banging on the table that Tua wouldn't be able to play this year. You know what I mean? And you see it now, and like they only have 2 quarterbacks on their active roster. So that means if Ryan Fitzpatrick gets hurt, Tua goes in. That screams to me that he's 100%, because I don't think any franchise would be foolish enough to risk their future and rush a guy out there. So they, maybe the injury wasn't as worse as we all thought initially, whatever it is. But that the Dolphins doctors are around the clock trying to make sure that Tua is healthy. And if he's the only other quarterback on the roster, and your quarterback's 37 years old, takes a lot of hits, gets sacked, he'll go run face first and dive for first downs.
And you cut a 10th overall pick.
Yep, you have some confidence that there's health and God, man, I think it's got to be hard for Stephen Ross as the owner not to push the coaches to get him in there for that Thursday night game in Jacksonville, because that's going to get you in the national exposure and put you in the spotlight. And Ryan Fitzpatrick's fun, and they'll talk about how he's a good veteran and his beard and how many teams he's been on. But, God, if you put Tua out there on that Thursday night and he tore up that Jacksonville team, God, he set the NFL headlines on fire.
Yeah, that's what I think. I think that's what they're hoping a little bit with when they gave us Romo and Nance, that maybe something happened and it got out of control and Tua came in and saw some action. Yeah, man, I agree with everything you just said about Tua there. I think it just speaks about the level of confidence. And here's one thing I want to ask you, going off of all that again before you get out of here. Have you heard anything as to why he was actually removed from the injury report this week, because last week we know he was on it. It was just because he was getting his regular treatment. Was he removed from the injury report as of today because he's done his treatment on his hip?
Yeah, well, I always thought the NFL injury report was kind of like that magazine you see at the newspaper, The Inquirer, right? Like,
Yeah.
Like aliens found in Tom Cruise's backyard. I just don't. It's always gamemanship on there. I think Tua is 100% healthy. That's probably why he's not on the report. I think he's been 100% healthy since they decided to go 2 quarterbacks on the active roster, and he was one of them. I think him being on the thing last week was probably some gamemanship. Those old Patriot coaches like to take their little fun jabs at Bill Belichick, and he likes to do it back. So, I think Tua's healthy, and I think that the reason he's not on the injury report this week is because he's ready. And I think that means that, the kid's going to get on the field soon enough. I think a lot of us thought maybe week 13, cleanup duty. I think it's going to happen here pretty soon. And that's not an indictment on Ryan Fitzpatrick not being a good football player. It's an indictment on drafting a guy that has elite skill set, that has been a prodigy at the position since winning a national championship in his first half of college football. And I think what that means is that, Stephen Ross, he's big box office. We haven't had big box office guys in Miami in a long time, man. Jay Fiedler wasn't going to do this, right? Jay Fiedler wasn't going to have a top-selling jersey. Damon Heward wasn't going to do this. It's time for us to have an electric star. How fun is it that anytime something comes out, if it's a bobblehead or a jersey, that Tua's included, and he's like one of the 8 players because he's a superstar, man, and we have one that we probably haven't had, since Ricky.
You know who it reminds me of? Bro? I watch hockey. I'm pretty connected with hockey too. I have like family involved in hockey and stuff.
Sure.
I'm a Penguins fan since birth.
Oof, I'm a Caps fan, man. Ooh.
It's Sidney Crosby. Tua is what Sidney Crosby came into the NHL.
Yeah.
It's literally the hype all over again. Like, I don't think people realize the NFL is ready to make either Joe Burrow or Tua or both the face of the league for now until someone else steps up.
Yeah. Oh, well, I think Tua, I think you're going to see the Pat Mahomes, the Lamar Jacksons, the Russell Wilsons be in a lot of those promos. And if you see Tua's already included in a lot of those things, if his play matches the hype, he's going to be right there.
Yeah, I agree, man. Man, it was so awesome having you on, bro.
Absolutely, man.
Neal, I loved it, man. I can't wait to do it again. Guys, go follow Neal on Twitter at Neal Driscoll. He's going to be a great follow through the whole season and through the off season as well. It's year round over there. Again, Neal, I appreciate you for coming on, my friend.
Awesome. Hey, man, have a great night. Enjoy football tomorrow. Hopefully the Dolphins get us a W Sunday, and I'll definitely be in touch.
All right, brother. You have a good one.
Awesome, man. Have a good one.
Guys, like I said, go follow Neal Driscoll over on Twitter. Go find his work on Pro Football Network. He does great stuff. Great conversation, especially when it comes to the draft. The man knows what he's talking about. So I want y'all to go give him a follow. And I haven't done it yet just because I didn't want to interrupt that good conversation. But smash that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. We were at about 1,297 subscribers when the stream started. Are we at 1,300? Let's see. We are at 1,300 exactly. So let's keep bringing that number higher and higher as the season keeps going, guys, because we got some announcements coming for you in the soon time. Guys, if you'd like to donate to the channel, paypal.me/Phinside. Of course, we appreciate anyone and all donations, anyone that donates and all donations. And of course, if you want to become a Phinside the NFL Patreon, patreon.com/Phinside the NFL. Guys, there's a $5 level, there's a $10 level, there's a $15 level, there's a $20 level. There's different benefits to each level as well. So go over there, take a look, see if any of those levels interest you. And as usual, we're going to shout out the Patrons because we hit the magic number of 13 just last night, and we hit 1,300 today. So Dan Marino was all around, and that was to his college number. So good things are in the air. Infinite Trauma, Rhino Sith, our course, our original Patreons, Fake Spike 94, Shake Money, Joe B, KA All Day, Ramon Casillas, Seth, Mr. Two Bits, Miguel Angel Hernandez, of course, the homie Ricketic, and our latest is Victor Scott Ramos. We appreciate you as well, homie. So thanking each and every one of you guys that, just even hit the like button. You don't have to donate. We appreciate you that do, because you keep this train moving. And you're going to allow us to go to training camp next year, do a lot of things. Appreciate Fake Spike. Thanks, man. Awesome show. Reason. Keep grinding with the $4.99 super chat donation. That also is a way you guys can donate if you want. We're going to be going to training camp. If everything keeps going well and it stacks up enough, we'll go to the draft. So the content, really, it's going to go as far as we all want it to go here in terms of the effort we're about to put in, the support we get from you guys. And that support comes down to even just hitting the like button to get us in the positive algorithm so we end up in recommended videos for everyone out there. Because we got some things we're going to do, man. We're in some talks. We're kind of getting a hold of everything going on. This is our first season rocking this, so we're going to keep the post-game show rolling. But there could be some additions coming to Sundays in the next few weeks, people. And we do have a show idea that we are currently creating the format to that will be coming on Wednesday nights if everything goes proper. So we got some special things. And like I said, next week, we're waiting on that all 22 because you can't do a proper film study with no 10-minute, 30-second highlight film. That's not how it's done, guys. I'm going to say this again. I know there was someone in the comment section who, they had their wrench taken away last night. And it's the reason why, because, I expect things out of my mods. I expect standards. This isn't the other side over here. I expect educational standards. We've taught you guys enough. We've educated you guys enough where you should not be falling for fool's gold and going in other people's streams and promoting a joke of something that people call a film study. Come on, guys. That's not watching film. That is not how you watch film. If you try to pass a highlight package off as a film study and you believe a highlight package should be film study, you don't know how to watch film or you've never truly watched film. And I'm not trying to be an asshole. I'm not trying to be arrogant. This is just how it is, guys. No one in the scouting community will call that a legitimate film study. So we have a legitimate film study that will be coming hopefully next week. We're just waiting for the film to drop. NFL needs to pick their ass up a little bit here. It's kind of a running joke going on right now in this film junkie community about what NFL is doing right now with the All-22. But that's what we'll be doing, guys. We'll be doing stuff like that. That'll be coming. So we're going to have that coming. We're going to have that Wednesday show that I'm formatting out right now. Hopefully, if everything goes properly, we're going to have that Friday show, and there could be a possible addition coming to the Sunday show very, very soon. Other than that, guys, it's Wednesday, 10:48. I'm going to be back with you guys and with EM on Friday night, and we are going exactly Poseidon. And I know, Poseidon, me and him haven't always seen eye to eye, and he hasn't always seen eye to eye with me and EM's evaluation and player evaluations, or even sometimes our thoughts. But, brother, 110%, that is what it is. That is the truest thing ever. All right? I don't want to hear nothing else, man. So shout out to you, Poseidon, for the comment. I'm going to give you the comment of the night. You get my game ball for comment of the night because That's real talk. And that's also coming from an objective stance because, like I said, me and Poseidon with DM, he hasn't always seen eye to eye with us. But at the end of the day, Poseidon's 110% correct. You know? So salute to you, Poseidon. But that's what it is, guys. We'll be coming with something. A couple of our mods already know who that film study is going to be on. So we're expecting Sunday to go the same way and just add to the collection of film we're going to have. So, yeah, guys, we will be back Friday night for our basically preview show with keys to victory and all that good stuff. And then we'll be back Sunday after that with our post-game show. And like I said, got something in the works for potentially that Sunday, extending that. So, guys, we will be back Friday night. Until then, y'all already know what time it is. It's Fins Up all day, every day. I appreciate each and every one of you, even the haters that were kind enough to hit the subscribe button so the notifications go off so they can come in here and hit the dislike button. I love it because guess what? Haters got to hate. Someone's got to do it. And usually haters only come out of the woodwork when you're making moves and making things happen. So we'll keep it moving, boys. Appreciate boys and girls. Appreciate all of you. Love all of you. And we'll catch y'all on Friday. Like I said,